Hi guys, welcome to Manhood Explained. My name is Kamil. Today is 20th of September 2020. Welcome to video number 268. Let me tell you a short story that happened to me today. It was kind of interesting. I was sitting in a park, working on my stuff, on a few of my projects, and right there in front of me, because it was a park, there was a young boy riding a bike, having those two additional wheels at the end because it looks like he was trying to learn how to ride a bike. And then when he was passing with his older brother on a bigger bike, just straight in front of me, the young boy just turned his bike like I don't know 90 degrees basically, and he fall from the bike and he's starting to cry. I can see his older brother stopping right away and coming to him, helping him to stand up, and he basically is able to kind of help him, but the boy still cries. And I can see through this whole field his older sister and his mother are running to the young boy. And they're coming close to this whole situation, and they're asking, what happened? Is he okay? And the older boy says, yeah, everything is fine, he's okay. But even though, hearing that, the sister grabs the boy, basically lifting him up of the floor, and basically holds him holds him in her arms just to make him stop crying. And then you can see that boy is not really crying because he hurt himself, but he's just starting to lament. It was so funny to watch because you know that he is just it's not a cry of because he was hurt, but it's a cry just because he's he's basically holding arms, and is just lamenting because he can. And interestingly enough, for a few seconds, his sister is holding him in her arms, but then she gives him to his mother, and he continuing this lamenting, and the sister gets on his bike and starts to ride it to show him how he's supposed to do that. And that was funny because he's lamenting, and then he looks at his sister, he stops for like 20 seconds, and then he comes back to lamenting. And I was sitting there laughing out of seeing this absurdity of the situation. But then I started to think that there's so much that we can learn from this situation, from this little boy. Because if we're looking at our context as men, everything starts somewhere. And if you look at this situation, I would automatically start to think, what kind of life I had as a boy, and what really I've learned about mother's love, about her being protective, sometimes overprotective. But then looking at myself as a man right now, I start to ask myself the questions that I want to ask you today. What have you learned about being a man from your childhood? Maybe you've been one of those boys that was cuddled to death. Maybe you've been one of these boys that basically had completely no idea what man really looks like, how it's supposed to look like, because the child was exactly that. You had tons of mother's love, which is great and which is awesome, and you couldn't understand love if your mother would not love you. But then, if that was all you had, then where's the teaching of manhood? Have you had your father there? Was he there's like a man that you could look up to, and or it was completely the opposite? Maybe he was never there. And then the second thing, going through like years of your childhood and so on, what have you learned about manhood from environment that you've been brought up in, from like a much wider group of people, like in your school that probably had no men teachers, maybe the PE, but at least from my experience, these guys are not really role models, and most of the teachers are ladies. Then what have you learned from, I don't know, maybe from a workplace, or you've been raised on a street? What have you learned from that about manhood, like true manhood? What have you learned about it from your church? Which is unfortunately, at least from my experience, church is concentrated on training men to be humble, to act like Christ. And it's all good, but we don't teach men how to be men. We don't teach what to do with the strength that you have. What we don't teach. Like the church is not, at least from my experience, it's not for testosterone-driven men who really understand their own true power. And that's why there's no many like true men in the church, because there's no place for them, unfortunately. But that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to change that. But then the next thing, you're going through your life, you go from your childhood through some experience from school, your church, and social environment. Then what have you been able to learn by yourself? Because maybe now you're in your relationship, now you're in your family, now you're married, now you've got kids. And then what do you know? What do you understand about manhood now? What getting into the situation teaches you about how you're supposed to deal with it? That's why so many of us are completely shocked what they see, how really the being husband and being a father looks like. Because many of us said, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know that it's going to look like this. Why? Because if you look at every stage of your life, there probably was no one that was teaching you that. And I want you to understand that this is why we're having issues with ourselves, because we don't know who we are. We don't know who we're supposed to be. We're not even sure what we want to make our lives, to make ourselves happy. Because now, you may think that you want a lot of, free time. Maybe you want a lot of having fun, playing computer games, watching movies, or a lot of intimacy with girls. But if you look close enough, and you've got this experience, you know that it's not bringing you happiness. It brings nothing to you. That's why so many of us struggle, because we don't know who we are, or we don't know who we're supposed to be, and we don't know what would really make us happy. And that's why you've got to understand that this is a reason why we end up in the situation that we are right now. Socially, economically, that's a long shot. But the thing that's happening in the society right now, it all comes down to crisis of manhood. Because if you've got crisis of manhood, you'll have crisis of leadership, you'll have crisis of fatherhood, you'll have crisis of a relationship in marriages, you'll have everything which is like a result of not having role models and leaders in society. That's why we end up where we are. And at least for me, this scream from the society and from ladies to and from other groups of people, not going into the details, scream for some kind of resolution is a result of that. There's no leadership, because there's no men who are gonna lead. And I'm not saying the ladies cannot lead. It's not about that. It's about if the men would play their role as they're supposed to, all those things would look completely different. Because if this is the one thing that you learn when you learn how to be a man, when you act like a man, your woman stops. She will stop want to play your own role. She gladly gonna jump into femininity and being the role. Being the role that satisfies you and satisfies her, because you're going to be in a role that satisfies you and satisfies her. So that's why we have a crisis of manhood, and no one taught you that. No one told you how it's supposed to look like. That's why you've got issues with this. So this is what I want you to take from this video. This little story about this boy who crashed with his bike today is perfect example, or perfect kind of possibility to look at your life and kind of really figure out that no one really teaches manhood. As I told you about relationship a few days ago, we are illiterate in a relationship because nobody's teaching that, and we are illiterate with manhood because no one teaches that, and that's why we are in this mess that we are today, starting from you personally, through your relationship to the society itself. That's why I want you to understand this truth, And I want to challenge you to look for the for knowledge about it, to look for understanding. What does it really mean, and how should I enter manhood? Because unfortunately, if the story that I told about all those years is true, then you never been kind of initiated to manhood. What's supposed to happen, and which happened through millennia basically by men who basically took their boys and showed them, if you want to be a man, you'll have to get out of this home and experience something that ladies won't experience, because if you want to take care of them, you'll have to experience something that they won't experience. I'm going to talk about it a little bit tomorrow, because I'm kind of gathering my thoughts to get there, and I'm having tons of great ideas to show you how it's supposed to look like. But today, challenge yourself, because just like with driving license, you had to learn how to drive a car to be able to do it and enjoy it. So think about it and do something about it, because the positive impact for everyone starts with you. That's what I wanted to say. That's why challenge yourself. It's worth it. If you like this video, like, share, comment. If you didn't, comment as well. Tell me what you think. Tell me what's your experience. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, give me a shout. I'll be glad to do it for you. That being said, see you tomorrow.